in comes Brian Moran to join us, the Director of Virginia Homeland Security. Director Moran, great to have you, sir.
Secretary.
That's fine. Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security, and there's
You
been
gotta
a
get a
variety of issues been dealing with, John, but it's nice to be with you. Good morning.
Thank you.
It's
Secretary
really
Moran.
odd. I was just telling Martha,
Yeah.
I hadn't walked out of the, I guess, north doors of the Patrick Henry building since March 12th. Hadn't walked up Broad Street since March 12th when the governor declared the declaration. The day has been early morning meeting with the governor and just sit in the second floor situation room for about 12 hours. So it was really kind of surreal just walking up Broad Street, like, wow, I haven't been out of the bunker in weeks.
Secretary Moran,
yeah.
thank you for keeping us safe here in the Commonwealth.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind of you, but there's a whole lot of other people keeping you safe. We have an extraordinary team of public safety professionals, both law enforcement and others, emergency management, all the healthcare workers. It really has been an extraordinary effort on so many people's part, and so we thank them all.
Our first responders.
So,
What input do you have with the governor on? And certainly you talk to him probably many times a day. If you're not just side by side with him most of the day, we're talking about
Well,
getting.
I'm a little concerned being close to you. I am with the governor a lot, so I'm particularly careful about not who I. I don't see a lot of masks in this room, but okay.
What
go ahead.
opportunity do we have to start opening business, whether it's on a broad scale or incrementally? How quick are we going to start seeing that happen here in Virginia?
Well, all the decisions the governor has made to date have been based on a lot of deliberation, a lot of discussion, but on data as well. And so we're reviewing that data constantly. And as we prepare to reopen Virginia and get people back to work and this economy humming again, it will be based on a number of factors. One of which, of course, is monitoring how many hospitalizations, how many folks are in ICU units, and then also our capacity for testing and availability of personal protective equipment. As we allow people to go back, and they have to be protected. I mean, there's a level of risk in everything we do. And typically that is a very individual decision, whether you choose to smoke, whether you choose to go rock climbing. There's a variety of activities that you and me may not believe, that we're a little bit more risk reverse than others. But as a government, we have to at least establish some reasonable standard with respect to risk. And so we need to establish some parameters. The social distancing, the governor has made those orders. I mean, that's clear, 6 feet apart. And then the PPE, and then a level of testing that would accommodate folks going back to work. So there's a number of factors to answer your question. It's not quite as easy as just Johnny. What's up?
Just explain the testing. So you got 8.5 million people in Virginia. Let's say tomorrow you got 8.5 million tests. Great. I go to West Virginia. I go and buy a Coke. Somebody's got COVID-19. Hands on the Coke. I don't wash them in time. The next day I've got COVID-19. Do I get tested like every day for the remainder of my life in perpetuity in order to get back to work?
Well, those are great points, John.
Thank you.
And it is not only our testing capacity, but then what do the tests reveal to us in terms of data we can use to reopen. And ultimately, we need to get where there's an instant test, so that as workers line up at the Newport News shipbuilding or at a poultry plant on the Eastern Shore, you can test, allow them in, and they come out and they're negative. But right now, we do not have that capability. There just isn't the technology yet to do that. But that's ultimately where we're going to need to get, John.
What if the Stanford and USC results are correct, and at the end of the day, we find out that 99.7% of people that had COVID-19 recover, and the same level of people die of the common influenza flu, which is right now what Stanford and USC studies without peer review are suggesting. Why would people in the Newport News shipyard have to get tested to go in as a welder? If 99.7 or 0.8% get it, recover like everything else, and we sequester off those more vulnerable, why would everybody have to be tested? What is the logic with that based on the new information coming out?
Well, because it's a very highly contagious virus. And secondly, and probably even more importantly, it is a fatal virus to those who have some pre-existing health conditions. The data, we have 324 as of yesterday. There was some IT glitches this morning, so I don't have today's numbers for you. But you that of what, almost 10,000 tests, positive tests, there's a percentage. This is far more fatal, 10 to 20 times more fatal than the common, flu that you referenced. So that is a greater degree of risk that we're all going to have to accept as we get back to a new normal.
You talked a lot about the data, and obviously there was a model that we were going by early on that was University of Washington, and that had Virginia peaking, and it was, I think, June, and actually moved that up into April.
Tomorrow it is. The IHME model,
Okay.
as of this morning, we discussed it. It has a peak April 23rd tomorrow in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
And let's hope that it's on.
I will join
University
you
of
in that.
Virginia
Brian,
got a
is that
different
what
model.
the UVA model said?
No.
No, the UVA model is
far
showing
different.
August. So they're using different data points. That's the only thing that can do that.
Well, the IHME model uses historical data. In UVA, you went to UVA?
I did.
It's a far more complicated and intelligent analysis, Joe.
Astute is what I like,
It's
Brian.
but it is. The IHME model is historical, based on Italy and China and others. Now, if you accept that data is accurate, then IHME is a very optimistic model and one would like to accept. But UVA has a very different model. It is based more on data that they are currently receiving and evaluating and analyzing here in the Commonwealth and around America. So, and that shows as you lift your foot off the brake pedal, it comes back, right? I mean, it's kind of like this roller coaster. As you lift it off, it goes up again and then down again as you push the brakes back on. That's why I think the testing and the PPE is so important for us to provide more of, because as we get back to a new normal, we're going to have to eventually get back.
Let me
to
put
work.
things in proper
So-
perspective and underscore something that Brian said a moment ago. Every year in the regular influenza, do you know how many millions of people get the flu? Influenza flu is synonymous. Between 39 million and 56 million people a year. Across the world, 650,000 people die every year because of the common flu. In the United States, there's somewhere between 40 and 60,000 people die every year because of the flu. Now, but what Brian said is the key. The flu, it ravages, this coronavirus flu ravages the elderly people in ways that we haven't seen before. That's who we're trying to prevent. It's not your 16-year-old son or my 4-year-old son or 3-year-old daughter or 2-year-old son. They're going to be, you're right, John, 99.9% chance they could go into a COVID-19 ward and come out and be perfectly fine. It's that elderly population that we're concerned about.
That just means we should have never shut everything down.
Exactly.
We should have focused on those who are most vulnerable.
Exactly.
But what we did, we put everybody in the same basket. And studies are even showing now that containment spreads the virus more than being outside. And what we did, we contained the virus to make it more susceptible to catch. And we should have kept the nation open. We should have fight the virus, build the economy.
Bishop, let me just tell you this. I love you, but you got the facts wrong. They kept it open in New York, and they were dying at the rate of 700 to 800 people a day. In Virginia, because we isolated, we kept that curve low, and the people that are most vulnerable, and everybody in this room agrees, are in the senior center, the assisted living centers, in prisons. Those people are the most vulnerable, but because we kept that level low. We've had
not
three.
keeping
I'm
open.
almost
We're
done.
talking
I'm
about
almost done.
containment. There's a
Bishop,
difference between shutting down and quarantining.
Bishop, if you'll let me finish, I'll make my point. They've had 20,000 deaths in New York State. How many have we had in the state of Virginia, Brian?
324 as of yesterday.
Point made. by isolating folks, shutting down business, we have kept the virus, the death rate, extremely low. That's the point.
But how
And
does it
now
re-
we can
how-
start.
How does it reconcile with Sweden, which did nothing, and their numbers are right in the middle of every other Western democracy, and Sweden did absolutely nothing. So there's another argument that says you have destroyed millions and millions of people's lives and businesses, caused stress, heart attacks, child support payments being missed, domestic violence, all this that you cause. You've shut down production, and you look at Sweden, who did nothing, and their numbers are the same. How do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I don't agree with those facts. The only country that I know that their president got on, and it was Brazil, that said, we're not going to do anything, and their numbers have skyrocketed. First of all, John, Sweden is isolated in itself. I don't know what the... take Iceland. Iceland has experienced spikes. They've got a small population. Why don't you just accept, John, the following fact? We had 20,000 deaths in in New York State, where we've had, because we shut down businesses in Virginia, and not all businesses, we've had 300 deaths, period. Now let's focus on what the real core crisis is going to be, and that's those senior centers. That's where we got to focus next.
And Joe, let me throw another obstacle into this, in that the asymptomatic spread of this disease. Right. And in the flu, your runny nose, you have flu symptoms. This, you can be walking around for 2 days.
We talked about that earlier.
Asymptomatic. And that's another reason why the testing is so important, because you may not know you even have it yet. You're in the plant, you're at Newport News Shipbuilding and spreading it to others. And that's underscores why the testing and the instant testing is important. And as that testing capacity and that testing technology develops, we need to incorporate it into as we open up. But that is it's a particularly debilitating disease, in that you can spread it for 2 days without even knowing it. And
We
so-
talked about that earlier, Brian. There
Yeah.
could be 700% higher the number of people that are walking around and are asymptomatic.
Yeah.
I've got to leave in a moment because I've actually got to prepare for a session later today. But Brian, there's something
It's simple. Just support all the governor's amendments.
I'm going to support most of them. I'm going to support most of them, Brian, but not all of them. Okay. But here's a couple of thoughts that I've shared with the Deputy Secretary of Commerce and Labor, and that I'd ask that you share with the governor. There are a few businesses that I think could be reopened, albeit with some conditions. Susan behind you runs a hairstyling company in Petersburg, and she believes...
My hair and
yeah, you need to get your hair cut.
starting to get long.
At least
Starting
you
to look
have
like a
hair.
liberal, John.
I know. Don't be flaunting your hair, you,
Brian-
Joe, flaunting your hair in front of us.
Mr. Secretary, if they could have set up appointments so that they come in every 15 or 30 minutes, so that there's not a crowd there, but there's one person and a stylist. The Richmond Metropolitan Zoo, I actually went out there, and they've got 150 acres, and they want to open it with social distancing, but actually issue tickets. I think we can start reopening some of these businesses and do it in a prudent fashion.
No, we welcome those suggestions. All of that is being discussed, Senator. We are discussing those types of, because the relief you all need, we recognize that they're really suffering right now, and we're trying to accommodate them. Again, we want to do it in a safe manner. We want to be data-driven, but if they can achieve social distancing in a manner that I think everybody is aware now of just how important this is. Maybe not you, John, based on the comments you've been arguing about today.
I don't buy it.
But, well, I wish you were right.
I know I'm right.
But you
Mr.
have something that's
Secretary,
10 to 20
could you
times
also
greater
look
than
into
the common flu.
Data too in South Dakota, because South Dakota didn't shut down at all.
Yeah.
And they had a spike. 300 people got it at a plant, and it was on the front page of the New York Times. Oh, the other thing on the front page of the
But
New
we're
York
all-
Times,
but that's a-
they went to Liberty University 2 times because 2 people got sick out of 15,000. Front page New York Times. This is the nonsense we have to deal with. Meantime,
John,
you
it's
can't
not
go to
nonsense.
work. It's
South
nonsense.
Dakota has the fewest population
What's the
in the
per
country
square
outside
foot?
of
Then she should-
Wyoming.
then-
And you see
she
what's
should-
happened in Virginia,
she
Northern
should be open.
Virginia, Fairfax, in Arlington, Alexandria, where there's more dense population, you have seen a greater outbreak. So, I mean, there is some conclusions you can draw from the data we already have here in the
Right.
Commonwealth. In New York
and
City,
I'm going to end it on this point. You can't have a model without data. You can't have data without an increase in testing. Mr. Secretary, one thing that I have been
wrong.
one of the gripes criticisms that I did have is the number of private labs that the RTD did a really good story
Mel Leano did
the
a
other day
very
about
nice
the number
story, yeah.
number of private labs that are
Yeah.
under capacity as
Right.
far as testing.
Underutilized.
Yeah, we
And
got to ramp that up.
LabCorp, Quest, and others, and that is a national effect. And what we have been really working on that with Karen Rimley, former Commissioner of Health. We've asked her to lead the task force because we really need a new set of eyes and energy there. We've been working on it, but there's a disconnect between a lot of the providers, Joe, who are not ordering testing because somebody comes in, oh, well, you have the symptoms, but we don't have the PPE at my doctor's office, so we're not going to administer the test. And like you said, John, it's no more than the flu, in terms of symptoms and illness. And so they send them home without testing for the COVID virus. So there is that, we want to better utilize those private labs and get a better sense of how much COVID actually exists in the Commonwealth. But that has a national impact, and I think we need to work with our provider community to make that happen. And we're on it, and we're working on it, and I think you're going to see bigger testing numbers in the near future.
I hope so. John,
We gotta go.
thanks for having me.
Thank you.
And always enjoy it. And
Nice to see you, Joe.
Martha,
God bless you,
Benjamin,
luck in
Mike,
session.
my former seatmate in the House, and Brian, my former seatmate in the
Mr.
House as well.
Secretary, thanks for coming. We're out
Thank
of
you,
time.
Mr. Secretary.